Welcome to the show. You are one-on-one with Wesley Sports Guy on YouTube and online all the time at wesleysportsguy.com as well. It has been a very frantic and busy week in the world of sports, and I'm going to bring it to you one segment at a time this week and every week here on YouTube. And be sure to subscribe and hit that Liberty Bell button as well to make sure you get notifications when a new video is posted. First off, I'd like to go off topic a little bit and sincerely thank you for your thoughts and prayers. As this week on Instagram, I announced the passing of our family dog, Daphne. 17 years was a long time, and I cherished every moment of it with her, and I'd like to thank you sincerely for your thoughts and prayers. It is greatly appreciated, and great dog. She will definitely be missed by all, and loved her personality. She was wicked smart as well. She didn't look it sometimes, but she was definitely a smart dog, and a good dog as well, and she will be sorely missed by all. Rest in peace, Daphne. Getting into the topics of the week, the NHL free agency and NBA free agency were quite frantic, to say the least, and we'll start with the NHL. The biggest free agent acquisition so far this year has been John Tavares. He has left the New York Islanders, the team that drafted him first overall. He moved on to his hometown team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, on a 7-year contract, and that doesn't instantly make the Toronto Maple Leafs the favorites to win the Stanley Cup by far, but it definitely puts them in contention, which technically they were in contention to begin with that young, talented team. The only weakness on the Toronto Maple Leafs so far going into next year right now is going to be the defensive side. On the blue line, it's not the greatest group of players that any team has in the NHL right now, but looking at the way the league is structured, it's fast-paced, it's high-scoring action, and if you have mobile defensemen, which the Leafs do have a couple, it's going to bode well for them going forward, and that should help them a lot, having a talented player like Tavares, who's arguably one of the best centers in the NHL today, going to play for them. And that great group of young players led by Austin Matthews, another great center who's up and coming for the Maple Leafs, number 1 overall pick a few years ago for them, instantly turned that franchise around into playoff contenders. And now with Tavares, they are legitimate cup contenders. And that's a team to look forward to next year in the Eastern Conference and for many years going forward. Another big free agent, Paul Stastny, another top centerman in the NHL, left the Winnipeg Jets, who acquired him at a deadline deal from the St. Louis Blues this past season. He signed a free agent contract with the upstart Vegas Golden Knights. That is their biggest free agent acquisition and only now their second year of existence. He goes into a very talented group that still has a solid defensive core with a great goalie in Marc-Andre Fleury. Vegas still going to be cup contenders next year. Now you add a great center in Paul Stastny, going to be on the top 6 line, or part of the top 6 forwards on the top 2 lines for them, I should say. That's going to be a team to watch in the Western Conference, and legitimately they should be right in the thick of it for not just the Stanley Cup, but the Western Conference as well. As everybody's been talking about, the NBA free agency was fast and furious, you could say the least. The Los Angeles Lakers made the biggest acquisition, as you can see by my bias here with the hat and a little bit of a shirt here. But anyway, LeBron James is coming to the Los Angeles Lakers. He signed a 4-year max contract with them, and following suit was Rajon Rondo, Lance Stevenson, and JaVale McGee, all signing 1-year contracts to play with the Lakers next year, which the only subtraction the Lakers have made thus far that has made any impact is Julius Randle, who was renounced of his rights as a restricted free agent. He became unrestricted and signed rather quickly, in less than 24 hours. He agreed to a 2-year pact with the New Orleans Pelicans. All this action basically means the Lakers should be a playoff team. They're not going to be crowned champions by any means, because then the Golden State Warriors countered that by agreeing to a 1-year pact with DeMarcus Cousins, who, if you remember, is coming off a torn Achilles injury with the New Orleans Pelicans last year. So I'm not ready to crown the Lakers or even the Warriors by any means, but this makes the NBA and specifically the Western Conference incredibly stacked next year. On paper, as it is right now, 15 teams in each conference. Legitimately, there's 11 teams in the West that can be a playoff team next year. 11 out of 15. I don't think I've ever seen that before, even going back to the early 2000s when the Western Conference was stacked then. It's been stacked pretty much ever since the retirement of Michael Jordan with the Chicago Bulls, his last time there at the end of the 98 season. going forward. It's been a lopsided Western Conference for the most part. And then obviously with the influx of stars that you have currently with Paul George, LeBron James being in the Eastern Conference for the beginning of their careers and majority of their careers, you could say. Now they're in the West. Paul George also re-signing with the Oklahoma City Thunder on a max contract. He stays in the West. LeBron leaving the East creates a huge vacuum where the talent pool looks like it almost diminished in the Eastern Conference, but that's the impact that one player can do. So what does this all mean for the Western Conference? Well, like I just said, 11 teams legitimately are playoff contenders. In the East, anybody can make the playoffs in the conference when you look at it as a whole. At the top, you've got Boston, you've got Indiana, Toronto to a certain extent, but they just fired their coach of the year in Dwayne Casey, so who knows if Toronto's going to stay at the top. But looking at the whole landscape going forward, the Western Conference is going to be the most entertaining one by far. And with 11 teams being in contention for a playoff spot, it's kind of not far-fetched to think that you have to win 50 games to even make the playoffs in the West. That's how competitive it's going to be going forward. And you look at just one example real quick of how competitive it's going to be. Denver and Minnesota played it out for the last playoff spot in their final game going up against each other last season. Minnesota was the winner, and they got the pleasure of playing the Houston Rockets in the first round. Speaking of the Houston Rockets, they kept Chris Paul. They're still going to be contenders next year. Golden State Warriors are still going to be there as well. And then you add DeMarcus Cousins when he's healthy, closer to playoff time. That's going to be a team to watch. But don't rest on your laurels, though. This is going to make the entire season must-see TV. You have to play every single game if you want to have a chance of winning the playoffs, or getting into the playoffs, I should say, and even getting to the finals, you could say. It's up for grabs right now. There's only a handful of teams that you can say right now would win the NBA Finals, but it's legitimately up for grabs. It's going to be fun to watch. I'm not crowning the Lakers, even though I am a Laker fan. Born and bred. It's just the way it is. Sorry. But I'm not going to crown them yet. There's still a long road to go. The Warriors are the defending champs for a reason, and they are the best team in the NBA right now. But this is going to be a little interesting now to see if somebody's going to be able to knock them off and not even let them get to the finals to play whoever's going to be the Eastern Conference. Time for the segment that doesn't classify the Declaration of Independence as hate speech. Do you remember?
You remember?
Do you remember Bobby Bonilla? Bobby Bonilla was sort of a fledgling major leaguer back in the heyday of the early 90s and early 2000s. Not a Hall of Famer by any stretch of the imagination. He averaged 279, 287 home runs total for his career, and he had 1,173 RBIs. Not great numbers by any stretch, but decent for the most part. He was also a very overpaid player in his time as well. Well, he still is actually getting paid nowadays because technically the payment that he was due for the New York Mets back in the year 2000 to the tune of $5.9 million is still owed to him after all this time. Now, what ended up happening is that the New York Mets at the time didn't want to pay him that salary, so they decided to defer those payments with an 8% annual interest rate. 8 payments in now, when it started in 2011, Bobby Bonilla has collected almost $10 million of that $5.9 million salary. 18 more payments left are coming to Bobby Bonilla every July 1st up until the year 2035. When all is all said and done, he's going to make almost $30 million on that $5.9 million deferred payment. Now, why would you say the New York Mets are still paying him after all this time? Well, it's mainly because they were investing a lot of money with a so-called phony investor by the name of Bernie Madoff back in those days. Yeah, Bernie Madoff, the one that scammed a lot of people out of billions of dollars, not just millions, but it was quite a bit of money. Look it up. He scammed everybody you could ever think of, including the ownership of the New York Mets, the Wilpon family. Now, the Wilpons were getting money on pretty good interest rates at the time, so that's why they thought, oh, let's just go ahead and defer some payments to Bobby Bonilla and such and just worry about it later. Well, it's kind of hurting the New York Mets right now because when the whole thing happened with Bernie Madoff and blew to everybody's face, including the New York Mets, it kind of set them back quite a bit, which you can see how the New York Mets are being run right now. They are just not looking good. Sure, they did make it to the World Series a few years ago. They didn't win it. They lost in 5 games. But payroll-wise, they've been hurting ever since the Madoff thing blew up. And this includes having to keep paying Bobby Bonilla just over $1.2 million every July 1st until the year 2035. Gotta love agents, because the agent that helped him get that payment for the rest, well, not the rest of his life, but even well after his playing days are done, from 2011 to 2035, he's going to get almost $30 million. He still lives in Florida right now, which is a no state tax state. So he's getting all that money free and clear. Gotta love it. Time for my feel-good story of the week, and I go to the World Cup in Russia. This past week, Japan got knocked out in the round of 16 by Belgium. Japan was leading that game 2-0, and Belgium ended up scoring 3 unanswered goals with less than 25 minutes left in the match, and thus heartbroken Japan, the team, their fans. Not a great scenario to be in by any stretch of the imagination, no matter the sport, but what was nice about it, what makes you feel good, is that not only did the Japanese fans clean up the area that they were in the stadium, no trash, nothing whatsoever, just spotless. The team as well left their locker room completely spotless as well, as you can see from the picture that I am including here from Twitter. The locker room was left spotless, and they also left a note in Russian that basically summed up by saying, thank you for the invite and for allowing us to play in your country. They left it in Russian. That is just a class act, and it doesn't shock me at all. It shouldn't really shock you if you know how the culture is in Japan. They're very clean about everything. They're very polite when they walk into not just their homes or apartment buildings. They take off their shoes. They do it at other people's houses as well, even though it's not your custom, but that's what they do, and that's something I grew up with, and I'm not shocked by this at all, but some people would find it kind of surprising that they're even cleaning up the stadium where they're sitting at and not just the locker room that they're playing in as well. But it's a class act all the way around. And that's makes you think, do you want to lead by example like that going forward? Thank you for tuning in this week. Be sure to subscribe at youtube.com and check it out every week as well at what'sthesportsguy.com. I'll be having my MLB All-Star team rosters for the American League and National League posted very soon. The All-Star game is just around the corner. I know, halfway point in the Major League season. Trades are coming as well, but the playoff contenders are beginning to take shape, but I will have the rosters posted for you at what'sthesportsguy.com. Be sure to subscribe and hit that Liberty Bell button to get the notifications for the next episode of yours truly, one-on-one with What's the Sports Guy. I will see you next time.
Cause I've been down so long that my crown